I'm the youngest. I'm the last of the Bambinos, as my dad always said, so. My dad worked in nickel plate underground, so we're gonna talk a little bit about that process and talk about the slope mining and then about surface mining. This Fulton County was tremendous in producing coal, lots of coal. So I hope I can present a little bit of that to you through my talk. I have a few chunks of coal up here. Some of it's number 6 and some of it's number 5. And you know, coal's getting hard to find. You can't buy it anymore that I know, and unless there's special places. I don't know about Springfield, but used to get it in Pekin. You can't buy it in Pekin anymore. So anyway, let's see if we can present something here, and I hope I do a good job. If not, boo me. That's all I can. So I've written down some stuff here to my stuff that my dad told me about when he was mining and stuff like that. And we'll start off that about when the first coal that was ever spotted in Illinois was in the 1600s, believe it or not. And it was on the bank of the Illinois River up by Utica, Illinois, which is the base of Starved Rock. And they said the Indians burned it a little bit up there. These were the Indian tribes that stayed at Starved Rock. But they didn't like it, according to the history books, because it was too hot and it smelled. So they didn't use it as much as everybody else did. Then in 1810 was the first time that coal was shipped down the Illinois River and headed for New Orleans and by barge. Then in 1822, Peoria, Illinois got involved in it, and that proceeded to start coal coming from Fulton County, all the counties in the state of Illinois, and it ended up going down the river to New Orleans too. And in 1833, there was approximately 6,000 tons of coal put on barges and shipped per year. Then go to 1890, and it was 15 million tons of coal per year. So that's how it shows you the mining industry increased and increased. From 1810 to 1940, believe it or not, there was 130 mines in Fulton County. Some of these mines were slope mines. I suppose a lot of people here know what they were. Shaft mines, and presented today, the last, since I'd say 1940 on, was surface mining. And that was the biggest production of all. And they produced more coal than anybody. So anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about the slope. Slope mining was the most dangerous part because farmers, landowners, or anybody, they were walking down the creek bank or something and see this black stuff come out of the baseline of the creek or on the slope of the hill, and they dig back in it, and it's coal. So they mine it out, and they dig back, take the coal, dig back, take the coal, forget that they had to do something above. And they had super, by the history book, lots of cave-ins. And they lost quite a few people that way. But it was the most easiest coal ever produced, because all they had to do was keep going in and mining it out, and it was easy to get after. Most of that was number 6. And I was told that most of it was anywhere from 3 foot to sometimes a 6 foot vein, number 6. And I went to one with my dad, and I think I was 8. And it was owned by Pete McInally, and it was south of Middleborough, Illinois. And I didn't go in because it spooked me out. It was just a hole in the wall, maybe 20 foot wide, 12 foot high, bank, pardon me. And didn't see no lights, and just like walking into nothing. And my dad went in, and he said there was about 4.5 foot vein of coal in that one. And then the next one I went into was south of, north of Middle Grove, pardon me. And it was on Aaron Davison's property, and it was in the edge of Littler's Creek. And it was the same thing. They went in, took the coal out, and that one really had lots of props up to hold the ceiling. But if you didn't have slate for ceiling, it was really hard to hold the ceiling up. If you just had dirt, it became really improbable to hold it up there, so you keep going after it. So then after that come about, they started to go into the shaft mining, and that was a little bit different story. You had to go down, and my dad was involved with the shaft mine at Farmington. It was called nickel plate, and it was 180 feet down. You couldn't take number 6 because they didn't have a roof. And what I mean by a roof, they didn't have slate or something that they could prop to hold the ceiling up. So they went on down to 85 feet and took number 5, and it was from anywhere from 30 inches to 50 inches thick. And and they had about a 4-foot slate roof. This is how he worked all day long, hunched over, which I know there's a few people in this party in here that probably know all about that. But when he worked in nickel plate, there was lots of interesting stories and lots of things that went on, and get into that a little bit later. But in St. David, I want to go into some shafts that I learned about. In St. David, there was the Big Creek Coal Company, and it had the most workers. They had 200 workers working there. And the average pay per day when they started was 75 cents. 75 cents, people. Yeah. But when they shut down, pardon me about the glasses and that, but when they shut down, the last pay was $1.50 a day. And that was 1928. Norris had 5 shafts. The Drake, the Rewalt, the number 5, Burketta Brothers, which probably somebody knows about them, the Shear Coal Company. That Burketta's was across where the Gilchrist Grinding used to be. The Shears is where Davis's Son and Gravel worked out of, and Gilchrist. Now Gilchrist was the biggest, and Gilchrist had 40 houses for the miners, and a school, and a church, and the mound's still there. And if you ever go that way, it's off, I can't think of the name of that road there, but anyway, the mound's still there, and you gotta think, and you look at that mound, it has to be at least 50, 60 feet high, and they've hauled some of them away. In fact, we did, for Mr. Bill Davison when he was Farmington Road Commissioner. And we dug into it and got into what they call the red shale, which is when the coal dust caught on fire and made this red colored rock. And he thought that was good for road bedding on some of the township roads, but it didn't work out. Once it got out in the sunlight and daylight, it disappeared. That didn't work. And let's see, and Gilchrist, Archie Gilchrist was his name, and he owned the mine, and they had a general store there, and they had 40 houses, and at one time, in the period of I think 1900, there was over 400 people in Norris. So it's pretty good change of product. Farmington had shaft mines that were nickel plate, Silver Creek, National, Puff Up. I already called a mine Puff Up. Struggling Monkey, another Pond Lily. Okay, I researched a little bit about Struggle Monkey was because they couldn't hold the props in the mines, otherwise they couldn't hold the ceiling up real good. Struggle Monkey, that was that. Pond Lily, water. They fought water continuously. So, and number 8, and Westerby was down on North Elmwood Road in Farmington, and the Alderman mine, I do not know for sure where it was. Number 8 has a mound, and it's still there, and it's right behind Walter's Ag Company on 116 west of Farmington. And it's been there for as long as I can remember. They had a lake built there. Now my nephew Keith Balagna owns that property behind, and he's got a beautiful lake there. And it was owned by the Benzel Mine Company. Now I don't for sure who that was. So nickel mine is where my dad worked. Like I say, it was 185 feet deep. Took number 5, and it was sunk in 1978. And it finished in 1952. It was owned by Illinois Colliery Company, and my dad's brother, John Balagna, where'd John go? This is their segment down below. Now this is nickel plate. This is John at the hoisting area and putting tickets in the bucket. Now every time we got a little car full of coal, which is 4 foot by 4 foot square, full of coal, usually weighed about a ton, and he'd bring it to there, take the ticket off of the buggy, and put it up on a nail. And for every car that was filled, each miner had a ticket. So he would put the ticket on there, he would take it off, put it on the nail, and then send the car up, which would be dumped up above the tipple, and come back down. There, he's taking the stickers, tags, off the keys, and putting them in the bucket so he can take them up for the miners to count what they did per day. Now, my sister's husband, Lyle Sprague, set a record in nickel plate underground for building the most car in one shift, which was a 10-hour shift, with 16 cars. Now, people were talking back there then was, well, we forked coal all day. And I didn't understand forking coal. Of course, I was, when they forked hay, and all the stuff stuff. But this is what they used underground. And anything that went in between, they didn't care, they didn't want it. They wanted hay, lump, and nut. And lump was the biggest, and that was the most. So that's what always came out the most. As far as I'm concerned, I imagine what I call stoker coal, or the fines, are still down there. Now when they mine, they take everything. So, and when nickel plate was going strong, why there was 18 shacks, everybody called them, which were houses for the miners, on the road going into nickel plate. And when they all came together, why, they always had lunch together at the bottom of the shack. And that over there at the bottom of the table is what they call a miner's lunch table. And on that picture with Mitchell, he's the host of the table. But I don't want you to look at the calendar. Maybe that's why he's smiling. Anyway, this was the coal miner's bucket. Water in here, food on top, you pull the lid off, and there was a little container inside that you could put your fruit in or whatever. And then you had coal on top. And that was my dad's bucket when he had it done thing. And when they started the mines down there, why there's always sprayed of gas. Nickel plate didn't have any gas whatsoever. but they would hang, believe it or not, canary cage at the mine shaft. That's where the coal went up. And there was somebody's job, I don't know for sure who, would take care of the canary, and he stayed down there all the time. So, yeah, it was quite another job for somebody, but had to be done. Now, as I say, the worst episode of a mine tragedy, I'll tell you that, I'll keep going here, was in Cherry, Illinois, and they had an explosion and they lost 249 men and boys. And when I say boys, there was a lot of young men that didn't go to school, they stayed and worked in the mines to keep their families going with money and food. Uncle John had 4 sons. Mitchell was the oldest, and he was a hoisting engineer, and he had to take care of when the mines got together, when they finally got the railroads there, to run the cars under the tipple to fill them up with coal, and plus hoist. So he was a busy man too. Jack, put another picture in here. Well, this is what they call the bone buggy. This is when they had it underneath it, they had electricity finally, and they would move the cars with this around in the entry. But then they had the ponies to move the cars from the rooms to the entries. I don't know what segment these on, but here they're little, this is one of the buggies. You can see how much coal it is. And you notice how nice and clean the guys are? This is at the shaft ready to go up. That's the ring belt right there. Ring was down, 2 was bring up. So Uncle John would push that up, and it was air operator. There's Uncle John. That's my dad's brother, the owner of the mine, right there. And he's got, I think there was a name for these. I want to say bonehead or something like that. But sometimes they worked good, sometimes they didn't. But there were electricity, and you can see the rods going up to the electricity on top, and they would push the cars back and forth in the main entry. But then with sometimes a picture by a big picture of a pony pulling a car out of one of the rooms. And nickel plate went accordingly from the shaft to the last room, which is where they went and dug the coal out the last time, was 3 miles. 3 miles, people underground. You know, they left, I always try to remember how much, but according to one of the grandsons of that side of the Balagna family, that they left anywhere from 4 to 5 foot between going in. They went in, took coal, come out, moved over 5 feet, went in, took coal, come out, and then kept going that way. But nickel plate, according to they have a room thing at the Farmington Museum in Farmington. They never went under Route 78, that would be to the east. And they never went under the town, what they call the Heat City Farmington Blacktop. And all the rest of that, and they went north almost 2 miles. And that was all underground. So at one time, when Silver Creek was going strong, and National Mine was going strong, my dad said that you could go down at Silver Creek and walk underground to Middle Grove, underground. So, and a lot of these mines dug into each other. And I always thought that would happen, somebody, being down there. Nickel plate dug into Westby and number 8, otherwise they met each other underground somewhere along the line. So it was quite interesting that we know about that. But nickel plate was, of course, I'm bragging this up because that's where my dad worked the most. But nickel plate had, I don't know, 180, I think 185 or 184 workers there. And my dad always told stories that when everybody had lunch, and they would tell a story And he said some of them you couldn't tell because they got a little bit raunchy. But he said one story he remembered real well was they had a guy named, a Norwegian guy that didn't speak good English, and he liked to come up and he would shoot the pigeons at the tipple and eat them. Of course, pigeon, I have had pigeons myself. And so these guys decided they'd play a trick on him because he would never speak in English, you know, he's kind of set by himself. So some guys got a live pigeon, and when everybody sat down with a bucket like that, dinner bucket like that, they put the pigeon in the top of the bucket. So they sat down, of course, everybody was waiting for him to take the lid off and see what would happen. So he takes the lid off, and he says, I thought I killed you. Continued on. So they don't know whether they really pranked him or he knew all about it. And another one, my dad was a carpenter on the trade at the site, and miners worked, you know, usually underground miners worked from October to April, and April was the last day, that was the big holiday. So he'd pick up a hammer and a saw and become a carpenter or do whatever he could do. Well, one of the guys that had one of the shacks or the houses that Nickel played wanted a room addition. And my dad walked up to him and he says, can you give me a dimension what you want? He looked at him and dumbfounded. And he said, well, do you want it 10 by 12? Do you want it 20 by 20? What do you want? And he says, I need a bedroom. Well, what do you want the dimensions to be? So he lays on the ground, stretches his arms out. He says, as long as I can reach this, and he turned around this way, did the same thing. He says, as long as I can do that, that's all I need. So they ended up, they made it 10 by 12. So that's some of the good stories. If Uncle John's brother, Mitchell, worked underground, and Bob worked underground. Jack was the third son. He went underground once and said, this isn't for me, and he became a professor at a college. And Steve was the youngest one. He was the one I run around with. In fact, Steve was the one that made a presentation and started this in about, I'd say 5-6 years ago, and trying to keep it going about, I know most of the people in Fulton County know about the strip mines, surface, but not too many people remember going down and what the men had to go through to make a living underground. So that's why more or less brought it. But Steve's job was to take care of the ponies that were below. They'd had 5 ponies, most pines. Nickel Plate had 3. Doc, Topsy, and Bird. And Doc was the most used because he was the biggest. And there is a picture on one of these that shows him coming out. But all their job was to pull the 4x4 coal dollies out of the rooms, out to the entries, which is the main. And then these machines were taken to the shaft, and up they would go. So Doc was Steve said, was a faker. And I said, well, what do you mean by a faker? He said, well, when you got down below, sometimes he'd act like he's really pulling, but you look, the chain wasn't even tight. But he stayed down below for months. And once a month, they'd bring him out. And when they brought him out, they had to cover their heads because of the sunlight, because down below there was nothing, see? So they cover them out and they have a vet come and check them all over, and then back down they go again. So they stayed down there. They had a room themselves. They had water brought to them, and hay, and everything. So that's how they worked then. But then these big machines, well, I took the coal and things to the main entry. Farmington, in the process of this, was booming at the time. And they had 2 communities. One was called 40 Oaks, and one was called 40 Acres. 40 Oaks, I'm not sure where it was, but these were all mine towns. And I know where 40 acres was, and that's where the Farmington Lagoon is. And there was 45 houses there that were all mine houses. And according to my dad, they were all moved out of there or tore down. And most of them were moved either to Norris or Farmington. And the ones down at Gilchrist, most of them went back into Norris or to Canton. When the mines shut down and everybody had to move out. But I do know that if you go up Court Street and you look on I would say the north side of the street, you look beginning, that a lot of the houses kind of look the same. And my dad said, yeah, them are mine houses. So that's how them communities got started. And then when these were all out there, why a lot of people went out afterwards and you didn't have dagger counters or coin finders or nothing, but they went out and looked and found several pieces of gold, because a lot of the miners back then, in the early parts, were paid by gold. Silver Creek was paid by gold back in them days. Another mine, Great Mine, was paid by gold, by the books and everything, until money took over. And so I wouldn't say somebody gets pie-eyed or drunk one night and then empty his wallet or his pocket in the wrong place, some gold pieces out there all over everywhere. So that did happen out there, especially at 45 acres. They said they had people out there all over looking through the mine ground and everything. So then when the mines really got started, why, here comes the railroad. And the beginning of the railroads, why, by I'd say 1850 on, why, they said there was 27,000 miles of tracks laid in Fulton County. There's a CDT loop, the TPW, and the MSAW that went through Farmington or near Farmington. At that time, they said there was only 8 mines that shipped coal out by rail. The rest was truck, back buggies, wherever they get it out. And this comes in fact that I've been trying to figure out and study. They talk about the narrow gauge railroad. And I have no clue what that meant, but we moved. I'm a member of the Charles Balagna and Sons House Movers out of Farmington. I'm one of them. We moved the ticket office that was in Kennedy, and it's down at the museum at Havana. But the main office was supposed to be in Farmington, and I did finally find out where it was. It's on the edge of Lillard's Creek, there just as you enter Farmington on be the southwest side. And I guess this railroad, I can't find a lot about it, but was meant to transport the miners to their locations, wherever they worked in Norris, St. David, Farmington, or wherever they worked, it transported them. And then they used it to haul coal, and everybody used it. There was talked about ladies would take it to come to Farmington shop, go to Canton. It went through Farmington, St. David, Canton, Lewiston, and Fairview, and according to the young man I talked to today, it went to Liverpool. And it was strictly made for transportation, but then they started hauling coal with it too. And it was narrow gauge, and I was told maybe it ran beside the CB&Q. I'm not sure, so I gotta do a little more history check on that. So if anybody has anything on that, or knows for sure anything about it, I'd be interested.
Is that the electric one?
I can tell you a little bit.
Yes.
I can tell you a little bit about it if you'd like.
Because there's two, right?
Yeah, there were two. So
There were two?
What you're referencing is the Illinois Central Electric Railway, and that was entered. And actually, I don't want to steal your show.
No, that's fine. I don't
Here's a
know.
picture that's right behind you. I'll show everyone. This is taken in Lewistown. I'm sorry, everyone over there, you can't see it very well. But this was taken into Lewistown in 1914 when the Illinois Central Electric
That was
got to
it.
town. So it was called an interurban railroad. It used overhead electrical wires to run its trolleys.
Right.
Interurban cars.
It was on a small gauge.
No, this was standard
That was
gauge,
standard.
regular gauge. The Fulton County narrow gauge railroad, it ran Lewistown up to Fairview, Cuba, all the way up to Galesburg. And it went south out of Lewistown through a little town called Seapo. I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm not sure. And that went to
West Savannah.
West Savannah, I would say East Savannah. And from there, the coal was unloaded off of the narrow gauge and trucked across the road of the bridge. So there were two different railroads.
Oh,
This
darn.
is the one this railroad was started in Canton in 1908. And its first line went south out of Canton to St. David. It was primarily used to transport workers to the mines in St.
Right.
David. We said one of the mines in St. David was the
Right.
biggest. Later on, they started using it to haul coal. Well, the CB&Q, what you mentioned, was such a bigger railroad, they could haul so much more coal. This line ended up going out of business in 1928, I believe,
Was that,
because of trucks and cars.
right,
People could get to work by automobile.
right.
All right, that's
Thank you.
These are train guys.
Now I know a little bit more. Sorry about the writing, but I can't remember everything. Now we kind of get into the working conditions of the miners. When they first started mining, this is way back in the part of 1700s. Believe it or not, this is what you wore when you went down on the ground. You put two guys work together now on this. Put this on your head, you lit the candle. And your partner next to you lit his candle, and you went to work. And they had candles along the shaft line on the post lit, and that's how they worked back then. Then they come out with carbide. And then they thought, man, we're in heaven. So they put, this is carbide, which is very gassy. So if you want to spit in here, the room will decay and disappear quickly. Anyway, this is carbide. You put it in here, and my dad's habit, probably everybody in here has ever used one of this, but they put, and it's usually pellets, this is almost turned to dust in here, and then you spin it on it, or you put her in here real fast, and then you pew, and that flame would shoot out about that far, and then it gradually work back, and then you hung it on your head, like this, and you went to work. My dad used this, I don't know how long, folks. He'd come home from moving houses or working, he'd put on his carbide light and strike it, fill it, and go out and work till 8, 9, 10 o'clock, come back in, go to bed, start the next day the same way. I wasn't born till 1940. My dad was a workhorse, period. Anyway, they had these in different sizes. John's got some down here in the museum. They had them really big, but the bigger you made the more weight you had hanging on your head. And this was the same thing. They filled this with carbide, struck it. These were hung on the post instead of like the candles. These were hung on the post to show you the way in the shaft. Then they had the kerosene lights, of course. Then, when the battery operated, this is my trapping light, which is no comparison to what they had back then. But they had a light that's strapped on here, and I couldn't find one until on the eBay they found one for me. But the light struck down on your feet, so you kind of shine when you're walking, and then you had a light up here, and it's about 6 inches square, and hung on your breath, and you recharged it every night. And when they had electricity come down, they had a big charging station at the bottom of the shaft, and that's what they put on them. So things were increasing all the time for the miners. They still ended up as black as coal when they left. You know, You come out, you can see the pictures, look at up and down, he's running a machine, he looks like he's, he looks like a ghost, and that's the way they look. I can remember Mom would say, well, Dad come out clean other than his face and his hands. Take his shirt off, he'd be all white, you know? It was always 60, 65 degrees down there when you're 185 feet below the surface. So most guys just wore long sleeve shirts. And when they were down there in the coker, this is about the size pick they used down there. Dad's handle was about this long and it finally disintegrated. But you didn't want a big handle because you worked it in a real slow, tight condition. Canary cages were in fact there, and when a canary would croak over, which never happens very often, to get up at the cherry vine, everybody had a signal. There was always somebody standing at the entryway where they take the buggies and the carts up, that he had a signal. Whenever the canary would croak over, he would report a signal, and everybody would come out of the mine as fast as they could. And one time, they pushed the signal of nickel plate, and they come out real quick, and they had one of the major tornadoes go through the area, and they wanted everybody out of the mine to head home. And that was the only time that in nickel plate that was ever pushed. In 1890, the miners were all complaining about their wages, and things were trying to get a little heated up. That's when the United Mine Workers started. And they kind of helped. You got your hand up for something, sir, you need to talk? Oh, okay. Anyway, the United Mine Workers started in 1890, and they tried to get the men's wages up to $1.58 per day. And they was having lots of competition. Of course, you can see why everybody, they were slave labor and everybody. Somebody said, no, you gotta pay somebody $1.58. Why, it ended up almost like a war. So some of the other miners made their own union, which was progressive. And they had lots of issues in Farmington and Norris, nothing St. David did. There was fights, brawl, and my dad told one situation at Nickel Blade, they had a loaded car, a mine car, which had 60-ton coal in it. They dumped it. They got enough men to get it rocking. They rocked it off the rails and got it turned over sideways. That's a feat. Like Guy said, they had that much energy and kept it worked underground or worked at the mine, and got a lot more work done. But that's just how bad they had. Shots fired, nobody got killed in St. County that I know of. They had the Air Guard come up Springfield a couple times, and they finally got it settled, and United Mine Workers took over. So that was an episode that wasn't nice, but it happened. In 1923, they estimated that there was over 130,000 miners in Fulton County. 1,000 underground mine, slope, shaft, and surface. Surface mining, we'll get to that, which I know everybody knows a lot about. since I was born in 1940, why, most of my knowledge we had in our area, we had Midland Electric, which went to Peabody Coal Company. Down in St. David, we had Little Sister, Buckhart Mine, and in Memphis Fayette, we had Triax Coal Company, and the Flamingo Mine was at Fairview. The Black Beauty Mine was near Springfield. The Pioneer Coal Company was in Laura, Illinois, and probably a lot more that I probably forgot. But when they come, why, they can show you on here that some of the machinery that they had. There's Doc. And that's Bob trying to lead him along. But you can see the height of the shaft. The conditions were not the greatest. There's Bob there, sorting the coal on one of the coal buggies. Clean clothes, huh? There, I think, at one time, I think they had one of the cars off the rails in the bottom. They were run on a real small gauge rail that was, well, I'd say 3 inches high, and there's approximately a ton in them cars. This is a sale ticket of my dad when he worked. He worked 11 days for $67.10. And he went and got 2 tons of coal, and this is what the United Mine Workers took off of it. So, buying coal, working 11 days, he ended up with $62.21, and that was 1931. That comes from nickel plate, owned by Illinois Coal Company. This is one of the tipples. I'm not sure if this is which one it is, John. Does it tip? Yes, it does. Oh, that's right here. But I know that most of these were guys that get on these and run them down the rail. And my brother Fred Balagna did that Midland. And he'd run it down the rail, run it over the scale, and hooked it onto the next car. And that's how they kept the tipple going. And cars being filled up with mostly just great coal, as I remember about it. So, keep going. Okay, this was one of the big machines, and this was, I call it the wheel. Okay, when this was north of Farmington, they couldn't use it anymore. They took these off, this off, that far off, and we moved the digger in, the wheel in, because they had to move it 3 miles back toward Middlegrove, and they didn't think they could balance the machine to move it that far. So they wanted, this was Peabody Coal Company then. So the miner, Jack Linner, said, we gotta take this off and take the boom off to make it balanced. So the crawlers would crawl it back to Holland Road, back to Middlegrove. So they loaded that on our dollies, which weighed 282 tons, just this part. And we put this part on dollies later. This was 60 foot long, and we moved it back to, well, it ended up past Middlegrove about half a mile, and we put the rest of it back together. Well, when they got this down on the haulage road, they still couldn't balance it. So they ended up, they hung 5 bats, mud bats, from the mine, which weighed about 9-10 apiece, on this side to balance it out. So they ended up, they said they probably could have left that on. They pulled it in and moved it, but they didn't. So they spent all that expense on what we call the wheel. That was quite a system to take the top 20 feet of dirt or so away on top of the shale and coal. Go ahead, John. This is the part of the drag line I'm adding, yes. Oh, no? I'm not sure what this is.
Stacker on the wheel.
That's a stacker?
Yeah.
Well, that's the back of the wheel, isn't it? Yes. See, you guys, I'm not surface mining, up by the field. I can join these pictures myself. This is the strip of which one, I don't have no clue. I do remember when they built the giant one north of Farmington, the Marion. I know this might be the spot beside Siri, but the Marion shovel, you could park 6 cars inside of it. That's how big the bucket was. It was a monster. Man, brings back memories, doesn't it? And there's the wheel of that, check it out. That's lower at the bottom of the coal. Haulage trucks. Haulage trucks you can haul anywhere from 60 to 100 ton. You take it to the mine and drop it down in a conveyor belt system and went into the tipple. It's the wheel again, when you turn that. Wow. Now see, we took that off. Good pictures. There's where they ride the car. To me, that, my brother did that. I thought that was dangerous. You're running that, not the right. You got-
Gravity can roll downhill,
Yep, all down, gradually downhill.
all again on an incline.
He run his over, had to stop it for the scale, to weigh it, and then run it on down, hook it to the next car. Yep, there's one of the cars.
Go back.
No, no. Burlington Road. I imagine they dumped one in off the side, Union guys dumped it, can't believe that.
Those coal cars were hopper cars, they had doors in the bottom.
Yeah, I know, but they dumped it over the side, dumped it, got it going so fast, it got it dumped. That's what my dad said, I didn't see it.
Some places had rotary dumpers.
Pardon?
Some places would have rotary dumpers.
Right, yeah.
The power plants did too.
Yeah. They turned them clear over.
Yeah.
Didn't even want hookup, did they, some of them?
Nope, if it was a unit train, every end had a rotary coupler, and you did your electric couple.
Yeah,
And that would let them dump the car and the coupler would roll.
right. This is when they turned the ground back over to livestock, whatever. You know, when they ended up leaving the strip mine ground, I can remember, you know, everybody said, pardon my language, who in the hell would want that ground now? And now, it's a fortune. Sportsmen's come along, and they found out that, oh man, wonderful fishing, wildlife, deer, turkey, geese, and I don't know if you folks will notice lately, there's a 10,000 geese flying around. And they're everywhere right now, so you can't go north, it's too bad, so we've gotta stay here. But anyway, I remember, I think it was Don Hurst in Farmington, was one of the first that bought some ground off of Peabody, and he gave $175 an acre. Now, I don't know where it's, somebody told me it's over almost $1,400, $1,500. Can't grow anything on it. Some of it. That's some of the big equipment. You take consideration, here they come out with something that weighs, you know, half a ton, 500,000 ton. And, the guys underneath use a little short pick, light, shovel, but I know these outproduced them, yes, but that's the way it was. Gee. That, I think that was, yeah, that's what they call big red, they call it big red. And that was a variant. And I helped them, they were erected that, north of Farmington, down by, what's the name of the school you went to school? Bear School Road.
Oh.
Corner of Bear School Road in Farmington, Farmington Township, Farmington Blacktop Road, East City. And, Joyce's was a McDonald before I married her, and her mom and dad given the right of way to run the power line to the erection site, but they did that. Anyway, coal mining was the main thing in Fulton County in that era. I'd say from 1780, 90 to 1952 when nickel plate closed. It was prosperous. Like I said, my dad always said, what else did you do back then? Depression. What was there to do? Either you was a miner, you was a farmer, or you run a store, or something like that. But the only money that was issued was either you was a miner or a farmer. And if you was a miner, you didn't get much, but you made a living. And he said, he remembered he went to town, 75 cents, and got 10 loaves of bread. 75 cents. And you could go to show, you could go then, $5 bill, come back with money ahead. So, anyway, and you gotta take into consideration that when you did find coal and it was processed and mined, it led to everything. Coal heated our houses. Coal created electricity. Coal run the steam engines that run the railroads. Coal did everything just about back then, kept us going. Now, they don't want us to use it, period. It pollutes the air. But I don't know where we're going, folks, I don't. I'm not fond of solar, they've told me too much about it yet, but I'm fond of that. I do not like the windmills, that's my point. And I think there's a total disasters of our agriculture and our location or our beauty of our country, the big white stack talking with the windmill running around. That's not for me. That's my opinion. I'm not Donald Trump. Coal mining was a very hard hand labor work. Very long days, you got to sleep. But that's all there was then, Fulton County. He wasn't a miner, he was a farmer, but life was good. Now, I won't lie to you, I read a lot of my information on the legacy of the mines in Fulton County. And all the articles in there, there's several articles that did about family members, uncles, fathers, daughters, whole families, big families. That's what astounded me. Back then, you know, you didn't have much, but there was families, and there were 7 in our family. 8. One family I talked about would say they had 10. And everybody worked. Everybody worked. Big gardens, you know, lots of things to do, and they, nobody ever grumbled. What astounded me about after each paragraph or after each article was done, There was nothing said, well, I hated the job I had. I just liked where I lived. I would never do that ever again. None of that. We always said it was hard work, but we survived, and it was family oriented. So did that mean that hard work kept your families closer and closer together? No, you worked together. So anyway, it just seems funny that if you read an article with 50 or 60, 70 different stories in it, and there wasn't one of them there saying that I would never do that ever again if I lived again. But I gotta say that my dad was a hardworking Italian, and there was lots of people of different orientations or different nationalities that worked the mines. A lot of Norwegians, a lot of Czechoslovakians, a lot of people from foreign countries. I can't name them all. Czechs, Turkey, there was people there, and
Some Croatians down this way.
Croatian, a lot of Croatian people, yes. And Norwegian people were there a lot. A lot of people come to Illinois that couldn't speak English real well, but it changed, and everybody became more educated, and communities grew. Like I say, St. David was a necropolis at one time. That's a lots of, like my dad said, lots of taverns. They had to have them. And of course, he always talked about making vino wine. And that was wine made out of vino grapes. And if anybody ever had a straight vino grape, just put it in your mouth and eat it. Buddy, I bet you don't keep it in there very long. Anyway, my dad had a harbor of them from here to that wall, and then an L, like an L-shaped deal. And it was all vino grapes. So he made his own wine. He loved wine. Then that was his main thing. And on Sunday nights, usually, I can remember this the day I died, my mom would put on, usually, Nat King Cole. And my dad would have a glass of vino wine, like this. Well, this was 6 o'clock on. And my mom and I said, well, we gotta have something. And I was 6, 7, 8, still remember it. She said, we'll get our wine out. I said, Mom, I can't drink wine. Yes, you can. She got out the Morgan David. And we had it on the rocks. So we listened to Nat King Cole, my mom did, or Perry Como, and celebrate the night usually that way when I was growing up. Still remember it. I will never forget it. And I was the last of 7. My dad said I was an oops. I was glad I was. And he raised our family all by working really hard. I never had nothing taken away from me. If I wanted something, I'd worked for it, I got it. I remember when we were in high school, 1954, my dad bought a resort in northern Minnesota. That was been his love for all his life. My dad was 58 years old, bought a resort, 120 acres. Up there, 4 cabins that were not finished in a lodge. And when he seen it, his eyes just sparkled. So him and my mom, Alice, moved up to Cook, Minnesota. And they moved up there usually the 1st of March and stayed to the 1st of October. And he run the resort. My mom did not like water. But anyway, she ended up loving the place. And they run it that time. And I think we had, I know, half of Middle Grove and half of Farmington come up to the resort every summer. Friends, neighbors, relatives, everybody came. And we run it. And I helped them out until, I got married. But anyway, that was okay too. I married the wife I've had, and we've been together for 65 years. now. We still try and go up to Lake Vermillion and Cook, Minnesota. I don't know if anybody here has been up in that region. Beautiful, fabulous fishing, and, so I'm glad I wasn't oops. And I'm 85 years old, and I hope to keep going. I'll try to get better at this, guys. I'm kind of a greenhorn, but this is some of the code. There's two chunks right here are number 6. This is number 5. There was number 7, north of Farmington. When they finished north of Farmington, there was a vein that was only 6 inches thick. And you still can see it there this day. If you get down on one, there's a lake down there. You gotta get in a boat and look up at the bank and you can still see the vein. But, this is what our country's made out of. How our hard workers presented themselves. And I hope everybody just keeps going like we do. Let it keep this country strong. I know President Trump keeps saying keep America strong. He's right. We can't fool around and let ourselves be ruled by somebody else. We gotta keep ourselves strong. You know, I know he says sometimes things that are stupid, not a lie. But to me, things are going forward. That's what we gotta have. So thank you. I live in Farmington, one of the Balagna house movers. And I'll take questions, whoever wants to ask. I'll try and answer the best I can.
You want me to explain the drag line?
Huh?
Do you want me to explain the drag line?
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay.
You
I
run
work,
it?
I worked at Rapiteen Mine.
Oh, did you? Okay. Did you
And-
know Albert Balagna?
I knew Mark Balagna.
Mark, yeah.
I worked with Mark. This is what's called a walking drag line. It is powered by a power cable about that big around, drop cords, big drop cords,
Yeah.
lots of electricity. And this is the boom, and we had a 1570 walking drag line. And this was it's not this one, but it had 275 foot long boom. 275 foot, that's a big. When it was on level ground, the head of the boom was 200 foot off the ground. And it had to go down below the ground, down in the pit. It had to dig the dirt out. It would swing around and dump it in the spoils where it's already dug. Swing around again and dig. Then it would walk backwards. This was on 2 shoes. They were like stepping shoes. They were about 20 foot long, and it would lift the drag line up, move it forward, set it down. Then the shoes would lift up and move forward like that and set down, and it walked backwards. Now, they had shovels, they had wheels, and they had drag lines. And this is a walking drag line. And the mines went out, I got 9 years in. A little bit more than 9 years, and I was out the door. I went down to Havana to a coal-fired plant, burned down there. It had a scrubber. So the emissions were good in Havana plant and in Duck Creek. Yep, Dick Cassidy's. Okay, Duck Creek, both of them had scrubbers. They shut them down anyway. They were burning clean and they started on Illinois coal. And then they went to Kentucky coal. And then they went to out west.
Was Wyoming coal.
Yeah.
And that vein is 15 foot deep.
some places 20 foot.
20 foot, yeah.
20 foot deep and about 20 foot overburden. Overburden is the ground that's on top of the seam of coal. About 20 foot of overburden, not very much. And then you had about 20 foot of coal. In Illinois, it was about 50 foot down of dirt you had to move for a 6 foot vein. The coal was there, but it wasn't in abundance like it was out west. Out west, they call it bug dust. It's crumbled up, and you set it on the parking lot in 90-degree weather, or out in the pile, poof, flame up. It'll burn just sitting there. You had to burn about half again as much western coal as what you had to for Kentucky or Illinois. Illinois and Kentucky is real good coal. Out west, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, they got a big amount of it, but it's not as good. But we had scrubbers on Havana and Duck Creek. Baldwin is another one they shut down. Scrubbers shut her down. Why? Politics. It's Pritzker and Vistra. Well, they shut them down. They shut them down. And the coal mines, they shut them down. The EPA did that. A lot of good jobs. I had almost 10 years in the mine and 30 in the power plant.
When did the last coal mine shut down in Fulton County?
About 92, 94.
In the 90s.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It was up by
See,
Farmington.
there's a coal miner, you can barely
Up by
get
Farmington.
move anymore.
Pardon?
So there's a coal miner right there, you can hardly get up and move it.
I work 600 feet underground, I can tell you about coal mining.
That's a walking drag.
Yep, anybody else, any more questions?
Can you explain the difference between you keep talking about 5 and 6 coal? What does that mean?
That's a vein.
You said you had a 5 and a 6.
Well, that's the vein of coal.
That's how many feet deep?
Yeah. Nickel plate was anywhere from 30 inches to 5 feet. So when you work, see some of the shaft openings, they took some of the shale up, which is the roof, they call it the roof. They took it out so you could walk straight, but when you went in the room, you usually went in the room like this and worked all day.
I thought maybe it was a different grade of coal. Like,
No, and nickel plate was all number 5.
so
When
you
were-
say it's number 5, so what's that mean?
Number 5 is the vein of coal. They were graded from 7, 6, 5.
Okay, now I get it.
Manor was number 4.
What was the difference from 7 to 6 5?
7 and 6 was hot. That was the best coal there was ever.
So it burned back.
Oh, yes. Number 5, but they mixed it.
Is 5 what Stoker coal was?
Yeah.
That's what okay.
Number 6 was better than Stoker coal.
I remember my dad would go to my coal and he'd say, "You want number 5."
Yeah. If you got it from nickel plate, it was usually number 5. If you went up to Florida, Pioneers, you get number 6. You had to drive more to get it.
What about Astoria? What about the Astoria? What was that?
Astoria.
The Astoria area.
Hey, guys. Hey, thank you guys for coming. I see some of you guys leaving. Just to make this easier, if you have some questions for Chuck, or if you want to help answer questions, feel free to come up. Please come and look at some of the equipment. We have a few things from our museum up here too. anyway, I do want to thank you guys for coming out. Hope you learned something about coal mining. And even if your family didn't mine, at some point you were affected by it in Fulton County.
Everybody, moving down plans.
Our federal government still pays a lot of projects in Fulton County due to the Reclamation Act of 1977, and Fulton County was used as a poster child to get that act passed because of all the land that was left, just scorched basically from some of the surface mines. So now any mining that had to be done, they had to pay in advance to reclaim it. So we knew that those companies would indeed have that money there to reclaim the land. So anyway, thanks again for coming.
And
Next month, our presentation will be on the disappearance of Faye Raleigh.
oh boy.
If you've lived in Fulton County for more than a week, you've probably heard of it. So,
Me too,
yeah.
I went to jury duty with a man from Southern. Oh boy, did I get an education. Don't say no more.
Anyway, thank you, Chuck.
Balagna, I got a question for you.
What?
You said that the buggies, the coal buggies, held about 2,000 pounds each, right?
Right.
And you said Mr. Sprague loaded about 16 of them in one day?
16 of them, one shift.
Okay, and, well, my question is Tennessee Ernie Ford's song 16 Tons about Mr. Sprague?
It's Tennessee Ernie Ford's song 16 Tons about. It's Tennessee Ernie Ford's song 16 Tons about.
Yeah, that's how I got it, yeah. I hope so, I'd be royal.
I can do that. Everybody, I can ask that question.
What?
Because that's my best friend.
Oh, yeah, gotcha. Yeah, now I remember when we were talking about. Yeah, we were talking about getting the spike